Kisakos is your usual suspect. Welcome back to yet another live podcast on your favorite football updates channel. It's a beautiful Friday morning, 43 minutes past the hour of 9 a.m. East African time when I come to you live from Kampala, Uganda. It's beautiful, bright, and sunny. One could say already hot at this early morning, but I hope you guys are doing okay. I hope you've been hanging in there, doing all the right things, enjoying some midweek football. Last night, we did enjoy the exploits of the UEFA Europa League, although I could only catch the glimpse of it in bits because of some really, really bad internet during the course of the night. But nonetheless, for those of you that were part of our live broadcast last night, we did come at around 9:40 p.m. East African time. Thank you so much for being part of that conversation. Thank you so much to all our new subscribers. We welcome you to the Football Tribe UG community. We appreciate you for taking the time to be with us. So, yeah, I hope you continue to do that in as far as things go on this channel. So, this morning, we'll be looking at the results from the UEFA Europa League from last night, but also we'll be diving into what's to come over the weekend in as far as Premier League action is concerned. We'll get, we'll touch a little bit on the transfers and among other things that we think that have made the news or are worthy of our time on this forum. But before we get into all that, allow me have our audios tested just to make sure everything does check out. Just to make sure everything checks out before we proceed in our broadcast this morning. Oh. Pedri, I hope you're doing okay. I hope you're doing all right. Thank you so much for being an avid, contributor on this channel. Everything you do for us, we do appreciate a great deal in terms of supporting what we do, correcting some of the things, especially when it comes to language, and all the engagement that you render us during these conversations. So yeah. It's that will be the gist of our discussions this morning for the game of sport. Like I said, we will begin our offer with the results from the UEFA Europa League last night. So many games are played in there as we head towards the tail end of the finishing line of the league stage or the league format of the UEFA Europa League itself. We left with one game to spare in that competition. Remember, it also has as many as 36 teams. But Israel's Maccabi Tel Aviv bottom in the standings, while Lyon lead the pile with 18 points as is a second place Aston Villa, Freiburg coming there, Midtjylland, Braga, AC Roma, French Varos, Raya Betis, FC Porto. Those are the teams in the top 9 respectively, but remember it's the top 8 that advance straight away to the round of 16, while the others go into the playoffs. So from the results from last night, Bologna and Celtic shared the spoils in a 2-2 draw, while Brann and Midtjylland shared the spoils in a 3-3 draw. Fenerbahce lost to Aston Villa by 0-0. Like I told you, that goal scored by Jordan Sancho in the 25th minute was enough to win the game for Aston Villa. Feyenoord beat up against Sturm Graz by 3-0, while Freiburg beat up against Maccabi Tel Aviv by 1-0. Malamo lost to Svena Zvezda by 1-0. PAOK beat up against Real Betis by 2-0. Victoria Pilsen and FC Porto shared the spoils in a 1-1 draw, while Olympic Lyon beat up against Young Boys by 0-0. Roma were 2-0 winners against VfB Stuttgart, while Celta Vigo beat up against Lille by 2-1. Dinamo Zagreb got the better of FCSP by beating them by 4-1, while FC Salzburg beat up against Basel by 3-1. French Varos and Panathinaikos shared the spoils in a 1-1 draw, while Nice beat up against the go-ahead Eagles of Netherlands by 3-1. Rangers and Rudogrets. Rangers won that one by goal to nil, was AC Braga beat up against Nottingham Forest by a goal to nil. Utrecht got beat by Genk by 2 goals to nil. So those were the results from the UEFA Europa League as of last night. In as far as things were concerned. Anyways, away from that, like I said, it's going to be a blockbuster weekend that comes our way, and it's match day 23 that will go on between Saturday, Sunday, and until Monday when Everton take on Leeds United at 11 p.m. But the early kickoff for match day 23 will come tomorrow at 3:30 p.m. when West Ham United host Sunderland. We know that West Ham United have really struggled for form this season. Burnley will be up against Tottenham Hotspurs at 6 p.m. At 6 p.m. there will be 3 fixtures kicking off at the same time. That's between Burnley hosting Tottenham Hotspurs. Fulham will be at home against Brighton and Hove Albion. Manchester City will be at the Etihad Stadium to entertain Wolverhampton Wanderers, while Bournemouth at 8:30 p.m. in the late kickoff on Saturday will be entertaining Liverpool at the Vitality Stadium. Liverpool, they are fresh from a 3-0 victory against Olympique Marseille in midweek in the UEFA Champions League. So they're looking, bright right ahead of that. Then on Super Sunday, we'll have 3 games kick off at 5 p.m. East African time when Brentford entertain Nottingham Forest. Crystal Palace will be at Selhurst Park against Chelsea, while Newcastle United will be at home against Aston Villa. And then in the late kickoff on Super Sunday for the biggest game of the weekend, Arsenal will host Manchester United at 7:30 p.m. East African time at the Emirates Stadium. So we'll be looking at that game as well. But like I told you, match day 23 wraps up with a trip to the Hill Dixon Stadium for Leeds United against Everton. Our spotlight this morning will be on the game between Arsenal and Manchester United, one of the biggest games that there is, in European football, in English football. Most of the derbies usually, or the rivalry games have, those sort of names, the way you have the North London derby between Tottenham and Arsenal, the way you have it, London derby, that Chelsea game and Arsenal, the way you have a Manchester derby between Man United and Manchester City, you have a Merseyside derby in Liverpool and Everton, you do have the Trainware derby between Newcastle and Sunderland, and all the other derbies that I think you have the Midlands derby between Aston Villa and is it Sunderland? Is it? Oh, whichever. So you have all these derbies around, but one of the biggest games in world football between Arsenal and Man United does not necessarily have any title to it. What makes it a derby of some sort, or a derby for its stature, is one, the stature of clubs and the historical context of the clubs, but particularly for the period between Sir Alex Ferguson was still in charge of the club, as well as St. Charles Wenger on the other side of the aisle for the Arsenal. So that's where you get that bit of rivalry. Those teams in their prime really had a good go at it. While United overall came out triumphant in majority of the aspects of the game, you cannot take it away that the rivalry was there. Good morning, Pedri. How are you, my brother? Welcome back to the Football Drive Nation. I hope you're having a great Friday morning. I hope you're good, Pedri. How is Spain? How are you this morning? What are you looking forward to in the weekend? You say you're good. Always a pleasure. I'm all right too. So I don't know if we should give it a derby, but usually when the fixture comes up, I always think of a renewal of old rivalries. Recently, United had fallen down the pecking order in terms of, not in terms of their stature as a club, but in terms of the results that have been coming their way in terms of on the pitch. We know that they've had 10 managerial changes since the departure of Sir Alex Ferguson in 2013, whereas Arsenal on the other side have only had they've only had 3. Unai Emery, Freddie Ljungberg as an interim briefly, and then Mikel Arteta. So Basically, that's what it is. So if there's anything that Arsenal have beaten up against Man United over the last maybe 5 years or 6 years, has been the stability of who is in charge at the helm of the club. Then, but when it comes to trophies, United have still been more triumphant. United have won more, I think, because when you go back to 2017 under Jose Mourinho, they win a cup double in the Europa League and the EFL Cup. They go to the 2021 UEFA Europa League finals. They lose that one against against Villarreal on penalties. They win the EFL Cup under Eric Ten Hag in his debut campaign and lose the FA Cup final. The subsequent year, they win the FA Cup, released all in that time. Arsenal have only won the FA Cup since the departure of Arsene Wenger. That was in 2020 under Mikel Arteta's first half season. They only made it to the other final that was in 2019 in Baku, Azerbaijan, the UEFA Europa League final, in which they got thumped by Chelsea by 4-1. You say in the weekend, I'm looking forward for going to Arsenal versus Man United in the Emirates Stadium. Oh, you'll be watching the game live? Wow, good luck to you. Those are the things I hope and wish to get to do someday, provided God gives me the means and the life going forward. But yeah, so it's that's the bit of context. We talk about a Man United side that put an end to Arsenal's 49 game unbeaten run. When you remember the season of 2003-2004 and going into the subsequent season, it was a chaotic game. So many bad officiation decisions in there. I've already said this. United got away with too much when it came to officiation decisions, which ordinarily I've not seen any other team just walk away with it. So even when they were ending Arsenal's unbeaten run at that time, I can remember a whole fold of decisions that went United's way that shouldn't have. But it is what it is. Can I take you with me? I have an extra ticket. I'm going to Barcelona versus Real Oviedo. Good luck on all that front. Unfortunately, you can't take me with you unless you're going to do that telepathetically, because I don't even have a valid passport. I remember my passport, I think, got expired last year, and I've yet to renew it. Reason being, anyway, I'll get to it when I get to it. It's not a priority because I do not travel that much. In any case, never left the country, so it sort of becomes second fiddle. Anyways, so that's what's up, but hopefully it will be renewed at some time to come. So the fixture in itself, like I said, comes at a time when United have made the announcement that they will be parting ways with Casemiro at the end of the season. Some people look at Casemiro as a costly purchase to Manchester United, given that they brought him in at the age of 30 for over £60 million, a five-time UEFA Champions League winner, has made 146 appearances for the club and scored about 21 goals. And then you look at the contract that he was given. It was a 4-year contract with an option to extend for a further year, put him on 350 grand a week, which is quite a lot of money. But United will not be exercising that option to extend his contract for a further year. Why? Because they, like I told you last night, for those of you that were part of the forum, they are looking to cut down on their wage bill, and parting ways with players like Casemiro is a step in that direction. If you could choose any country you could have been born in, which country would it be? Oh, wow, that's a very difficult question. I do not think, I don't know. It's a difficult one. It's a difficult one, really. I find so much comfort at home, but perhaps that's because it's the only place I know. To answer that question. But when I think of it deeper, I think I've admired a handful of countries from afar, based on the little or the much that I know about them. So I'll pass it for the little because I've never been to any of those countries. I've admired Cape Town, South Africa. I've admired Norway, although it's too cold. So that's my reservation. USA to a certain extent, not the whole of USA, but some parts of the USA. You know, the thing that scares me about the USA is their gun violence. Then and I know it's not everywhere, so I don't want to make it like it's an everyday thing, but yeah, it's a difficult question to answer. Maybe I'll keep thinking on it. Maybe by the end of the broadcast, I'll have come up with the most sufficient answer for you. So, anyways, so United won't be exercising their option to extend that contract to a further year, which I think if they sat down with Casemiro on the negotiating table, they could have, perhaps negotiated a significant pay cut for him to stay an extra year. Why? Because I think they still needed his services at the club, not as a priority starter, but as a squad player. So we had that discussion last night, and scanning all through that Man United midfield. I mean, there's not a player like Casemiro. And while they are looking forward to filling that gap in the summer, it also begs the question, how many players will they be bringing in? Because going into next season, the context for Man United may be much different from what it is at present day. Why? Because this time around, they're not in Europe. They dropped out of the EFL Cup against Grimsby Town at the first time of asking. Same fate in the FA Cup against Brighton. So they're only playing in one competition, which is the Premier League. So in other words, they play one game on a weekly basis, unless there is a midweek game in the Premier League, which does not come quite often, as do games in Europe. So their context next season will be much different. In other words, their requirements of squad depth and quality will be different. And I feel that parting ways with Casemiro is diluting a squad. Why? Because in all the options they have in that central midfield, like I said, there's not a player like Casemiro. While they have Manuel Ugarte, he's yet to prove himself. We've yet to see the best of him in United colours. He's not been a trusted figure, not even for Erik ten Hag, who had bought him from PSG quite expensively, nor did his former manager in Ruben Amorim from Sporting CP, who found him at Man United. So really, if you have doubts over Manuel Ugarte, and then you're parting ways with Casemiro, and when it comes to the summer, there could be reports possibly linking Manuel Ugarte with a move away from Man United. We do not know. Anything can happen. So that leaves you with Kobbie Mainoo as your central midfielder, who is ordinarily a number 8. Yes, he can play in the 6, but he's better off as an 8. So that means you have to go in the transfer window and not get just one central midfielder, but 2. Why do you get 2? Is because as good as a player you may sign, whether it's going to be Carlos Baleba, whether it's going to be Elliot Anderson or Adam Wharton or Lucien Agueme from Sevilla, the question will be, what if that player gets injured? Do you have enough in your squad to do the rotation? And even if they do not get injured, do you want to see them play, all 50, 60 games in a campaign? Can you bench on that? So at the end of the day, I'm an advocate of Man United having at least agreed something to retain Casemiro for a further year. Like I said, the finances prejudiced that decision, but I do not know what kind of conversations went on behind the scenes. But if I were in Manchester United's shoes, if I were Jason Wilcox as a director of football or sporting director, whatever the title is, I would be negotiating for Casemiro to stay with Man United for an extra year. Now, unless those discussions did not, go according to plan. Hi, Joseph. Good to have you on the broadcast. Guys, kindly like the broadcast, but also consider subscribing to the channel if you're new here. So I'll paint it in that context. So, and again, even when you look at players like Elliot Anderson, yes, central midfielder, but he's better off as an 8 box to box kind of a player. They've been linked with a potential move for former Wolverhampton Wanderers captain in Ruben Neves. Now, a lot of top clubs are going to be all over that signing. Why? Because he has about, I think, 6 months or less left to his current contract with Al Hilal, and a lot there's a lot of speculation points him in the direction for a return from Saudi Arabia to Europe. And any big team in Europe could use the services of Ruben Neves, one experienced player, 28 years of age, started out with the Portuguese national team. Brilliant box-to-box player. You could use his energy and his experience. Mohammed Sofian, hi. Casemiro need to stay. Exactly, that's my opinion. So when you look at what Man United have, and by the way, even if Man United were to go out and get an Adam Wharton and get a Carlos Baleba or an Elliot Anderson, any player that Man United would be able to bring in as a holding midfielder. Now, guys, let's stand on the right things of things. You have a lot of number 8s who can play as 6s, but I'm talking about particularly as a holding midfielder, that pivot player. I do not think that there's going to be a player that Man United can get that has the experience of a Casemiro. And even if you get the best that there is of talent in that position, there's still quite a number of things that those players could learn from a 5-time UEFA Champions League winner. And then the other thing it gives you is squad depth, because you retain Casemiro not because he's still in his prime and he's capable, or is the player that you want to start with for majority of games, but to give you that bit of squad rotation when you need it. When a cup competition comes around, that's the kind of game you start him in. That to see out a game, that's the kind of player you bring in. To sort of be in and around the squad. I gave yesterday the example, the way Arsenal signed Jorginho from Chelsea. It's not because he was coming in to be a starter. It's not because he was in his prime. But they knew they were going to need the services of a player like Jorginho at that point in his career. You remember, every time Thomas Partey wasn't at it, Jorginho stepped in. Every time Thomas Partey was injured, or if they needed to see out a game, if they needed to play with a double pivot of a holding midfield, that's what they went for, and things like that. Take the other example of Arsenal. How many holding midfielders do they have? They have Christian Norgard, who unfortunately has never started a Premier League game this season. In fact, according to reports linking him with a potential move away from Arsenal, I do not know what's happened between Christian Norgard and Mikel Arteta. I do not know what's happened there, but he's a brilliant player. Then they have Martin Zubimendi and Declan Rice. Now, it is Mikel Arteta that has largely deployed Declan Rice as a number 8, but we know he's a central midfielder or a number 6 ordinarily. So they have 3 options in just that role. And that's why you've had this seen Christian Norgard play in that role. Twice he's been played as a centre-back, and on a few occasions in cup competitions as a midfielder. So really, you look at that as an example and look at the depth there. Go to Manchester City. They have Rodrigo Cascante. They have Nico Gonzalez in that role. And then for purposes of a backup, you look at Tijani Reinders, who plays as an 8 but can play as a 6. You have Mateo Kovacic, same thing, who has been largely out through injury. So in that sort of context, then you go to Chelsea, where they have Casemiro. Sorry, they have Moises Caicedo. They have Dario Esugo. They have Romeo Lavia. Those are central midfielders or holding midfielders. But in addition to all that, they have makeshift players that can play in that role, the likes of Breche James. You have Enzo Fernandez, who is an 8 but can play as a 6. You have Andre Santos, he's an 8 but can also play as a 6. When I say he plays as an 8 but can play as a 6, that means pound for pound, he may not execute the role as a traditional 6, but at least they can be fitted in that role. So you have that simplest. So when you compare it with what Manchester United have, you can't help but feel that then there will be gaps within that Manchester United squad. I admire him more for defensive role. I like Maguire. Casemiro is also good in the air. Again, those are the player attributes that you're adding to. Again, the other perfect example to use is Harry Maguire. Now, I think on 2 different occasions, Man United have wanted to move on Harry Maguire. But let's be honest, how useful has Harry Maguire been every time they've needed him? One, when you look around Manchester United, their backline, if all those players are fully fit, you'd perhaps think of starting maybe Matthias De Ligt and Lisandro Martinez, maybe ahead of even Harry Maguire. Some people will go for Lenny Yoro, who unfortunately for him this season has not painted himself in much glory because he's not looked as brilliant as first thought, But nonetheless, you look at the deployment of Harry Maguire, it's the ability of having options, but options that do not necessarily culminate into a significant downgrade in terms of quality for what you have in the squad. So for me, I'm an advocate I'm of the school of thought that maybe perhaps Manchester United should have held on to Harry Maguire for an extra year. Again, sorry, Casemiro for an extra year. We do not know who is going to be in charge at Manchester United next season. Is it too early to look forward to next season? Not at all. In the context of Manchester United, why? Because you part ways with your permanent, head coach in Ruben Amorim and have told the world that Michael Carrick is an interim. Now, of course, the circumstances could change. That if Michael Carrick does wonders, as did Ole Gunnar Solskjaer in his interim role back in December 2018, when Jose Mourinho had been sacked, he could get the contract. Now, however, what are the odds of him getting that contract? According to rookies, the chances of that are 4 out of 10. In other words, it's less than a 50% a chance that he gets the permanent role, regardless of where the results go, because of the kind of vision perhaps Omar Barida, the CEO, and Jason Wilcox, as well as Sir Jim Ratcliffe, could have envisioned for the club going forward in regards to what they want to do. We know that they are looking at a number of options, or perhaps pondering a number of options for possible managers. Mauricio Pochettino, Luis Enrique, Carlo Ancelotti, Enzo Maresca, Xabi Alonso, and any other managerial candidates that could be available at their disposal to ponder about. So you think about it that way, and that bit of uncertainty, you do not know what it will bring in terms of cost. Because, for example, yes, the central midfield could be a priority position for Manchester United to fill, but I do not think they'll rush to fill it until they know who their manager is. Because the last thing you want to do is sign a player quite expensively, and then you bring on a manager on board who feels that's not the right fit of a player in his ideal team or in the vision of how he wants to play. What do I mean by that? Now, I'll give you the example of, let's say, Pep Guardiola. You could have a good player, let's say, like Douglas Luiz, good central midfielder, or an Amadou Onana, good central midfielder. And in his thinking, he's like, yes, he's a good player, but he's not the type of player that I need. I need more of a Martin Zubimendi. You get the point. So until Manchester United have a manager in place, there will be doubts over who they go for, or because, again, United will want to avoid that cycle of bringing in players, and then one of the excuses of the subsequent manager is, these are not my players, I had no say whatsoever in their signing. If you want me to build this team, I need this type of player, I need that type of player, blah, 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 Look how long it's taken Arsenal to build the ideal squad for Mikel Arteta. They've had some hits and misses. By hits and misses, I'm talking about players like Fabio Vieira. I'm talking about players like Alexander Zinchenko. Now, when I say hits and misses, it's not entirely to say that that player was a loss or was not a perfect fit, but some served their purposes for a short while and they needed to be moved on. You look at a player like Nuno Tavares, you get the point. So look how long it's taken them to build the kind of squad that they do have present day. So it's taken them as many as 5 years to build that kind of squad. And look at the dynamism and flexibilities within that squad. Maybe the next Manchester United manager is looking at that Arsenal blueprint and he's saying, I want something like that. And we're going to go out in the market and identify those players. And he's saying, out of the squad that you have at Manchester United, I do not want to do anything to do with this player, that, maybe Tom Heaton, third choice goalkeeper. I don't want him around. Altai Baindia, not my forte. I need a very good goalkeeper that is going to compete for that place with Seni Lomans. Then you look at their right back situation. They may think Diego Dalot is not enough. I need somebody else in there. They may look at left back and say, yeah, look, Shaw, it's time up for you. I understand for the first time, Luke Shaw, he's been fit for about, 8 months now? For a player that spent almost 3 years through injury. Now, all those things. So any new manager that walks in will have a review of that squad and say, okay, we need to get rid of players A, B, C, D, and then replace them with players, E, F, G, and that kind of thing. So that's what puts things into perspective for Man United. Anyways, let's move on to the game itself. Arsenal versus Manchester United. Manchester United make the trip to the Emirates Stadium, a place where Arsenal are yet to lose a single game in the Premier League this season. They've only dropped points in 2 games against Manchester City and against Liverpool. That means Arsenal are yet to win a big game in the traditional top 4 or against the traditional top 6 at the Emirates Stadium. Oh, when you said traditional top 6, somebody will ask, how about Tottenham Hotspur? Yes, they beat Tottenham Hotspur. But they've dropped points against Manchester City in a 1-1 draw. I brought Erling Haaland scoring in that one with the equalizer coming from Gabriel Martinelli, while the game against Liverpool ended in a goalless draw. So that's the place where Manchester United are going to go to. This game comes at a time when there's hardly a team in the Premier League that is on form. Teams have lost, teams have dropped points in draws. You look at what happened to Manchester City, you look at what's happened to Arsenal. Yes, they're unbeaten in the last 5 games, but they've only won 3 and drawn the other 2. That's the last 2, winning against Brighton, winning against Aston Villa and AFC Bournemouth, and then drawing to Liverpool and drawing to Nottingham Forest. Arsenal have not scored a goal in 180 minutes. That's in 2 games in the Premier League. So it's a cause for concern. On the other side, Man United themselves have won 2 of their last 5 games and drawn 3. So, like I said, when you look around for consistency in form, or that club that you could say is in stellar form, there may be none in the Premier League at the moment, So United's victories have come against Newcastle in a 1-0 victory. I think it was Patrick Dogu scoring in that game. And then against Manchester City, Brian Mbeumo and Patrick Dogu, that was over last weekend. And in between there, a 1-1 draw against Wolverhampton Wanderers, the kind of result that sent, Manchester United fans into a rage, how they drew a game against the bottom side. And then a 1-1 draw against Leeds United, which a game that led to the outburst of Ruben Amorim prior to his sacking, and then a 2-2 draw against Burnley. So, like I said, all teams are struggling for form. So, I do not think form is much of a basis that we can use, for consideration going into this particular fixture. Then, you'll bear in mind that I think Man United have not beaten up against Arsenal at the Emirates Stadium, I think coming on to 8 years now. Now, Man United, in fact, the last time Manchester United beat up against Arsenal was last season on penalties in the FA Cup. I think it was the 3rd round of the FA Cup. So, United have struggled to beat up against this Arsenal side because one of the things that Mikel Arteta as manager worked on was avoiding as much as possible, at whatever cost, losing against the big teams. Why? Because by the time he walked in, Arsenal was getting railroaded by all big teams. Chelsea, Manchester City, Man United, all the big Liverpool were literally beating Arsenal for fun, So among the first things he prioritized or fought against was to assemble a team that competes favorably against these top sides. And until their 1-0 loss against Liverpool back in August at Anfield, Arsenal, I think, had gone 2 years without losing to any of the top 6 or the big 6 clubs in the Premier League. So that's the kind of picture that you should be casting your lenses through in this particular fixture. when you look at the last 5 fixtures in the Premier League, particularly between the two sides, Arsenal have won 4 and they've drawn 1. That 1-all draw that came last season at Old Trafford. You remember the stunning free kick by Bruno Fernandes, and then the brilliant goal by Declan Rice. But earlier on this season, when the two sides met at Old Trafford, it was a 1-0 victory for the Arsenal. That goal scored by Ricardo Carafiori. And then last season at the Emirates Stadium, Arsenal beat up against Man United by 2-0. I think it was Julian Timber and William Saliba who scored 2 goals from set pieces or from corner kicks to win the game for the Arsenal. And then when you went things further back, in 2024, when Arsenal again went away to Old Trafford and beat up against Man United by 1-0, that goal scored by Leandro Trossard. And then further back around September 2023, the 3-1 victory for Arsenal against Manchester United. Marcus Rashford's goal, then Odegaard with the equalizer, then in stoppage time, Declan Rice and Gabriel Jesus. But in there, you had a goal ruled out for offside that had been scored by Alejandro Garnacho. So Arsenal have dominated this fixture in the last 5 games or so. Like I said, coming on to about 8 years, Arsenal have yet to lose a game against Manchester United. Now, that's not to say it's impossible for Arsenal to lose against Manchester United at home, because Man United had not won a game at Anfield since 2016, but they went there this season and beat up against Liverpool by 2-1. So really, anything is possible in the game of football. Any day is a good day to put an end to a bad run against a given opponent, and that kind of thing. So Arsenal will know that. Then the other thing is that the stakes are quite high for both teams, but they couldn't be any higher for a team like Arsenal. One, you're a title contender, you're leading the Premier League table with a 7-point difference, and you want to say you're in for it for the long hold. I mean, Manchester United are pursuing top 4. They are only 1 point off of the top 4. That is 1 point behind Liverpool, who are 4th place, and United are 5th. So they know what it means. That while they are 15 points behind the table leaders, Arsenal, winning that game reduces that deficit to 12 points. And I've said this, guys, mathematically, many teams are still into this title race. Now, ordinarily, you wouldn't think that Arsenal are going to go and lose, 5 games on the spin for Manchester United to play catch up with them. Are really hoping that United win all those games, really Arsenal losing if they are to get themselves back in the title frame. But whereas that sounds like a distant possibility, it starts with this game against Arsenal, that you win this game and then take it on from there, because winning this game means another huge statement that you make, that you are serious about plotting for that top 4 seat, that you are really making a run for it. Now, again, I'll say this. If you're Arsenal, the Premier League title is at stake for you here. Not because this is the game that decides it entirely, but winning this game sends another message that you are serious. You have 16 games left to play, starting with this one. So every game that goes by, you either walk closer towards the trophy itself, or you make steps backwards away from the trophy. That's what happens. There's no other way to put it. So those are the stakes for both sides going into this particular fixture for both teams. Of course, the teams overall have met about 67 times in the Premier League. Arsenal have won 22 times this fixture. United have won it 26, but majority of some of those wins for the Arsenal have come in the last time. You remember that season of 2020, 2021, as Mikel Arteta's first full season, when he had a bad rap sheet of results. About 10 games, he only won 1 fixture. Guess the fixture he won? 1-0 victory against Man United. That penalty by Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang. In there he had, I think, about 2 or 3 draws, and all the others were defeats. That's the time when majority of Arsenal fans were calling for his head on a spike. They were saying he's out of his depth, he's a rookie, he doesn't know anything. And I keep saying the advantage for Arsenal was that it was during the COVID season. fans were not in the stadiums, and that sort of put the pressure on Mikel Arteta a notch down, because if the fans had been in, the stadiums, they would have been protesting every single weekend, protesting the stay of Mikel Arteta, and maybe he could have swayed or forced his boss's hands to make a managerial change. But he had that as a blessing in disguise. Subsequently, they finished 8th in that campaign. So that's how you ought to look at this. Now, the game in itself is going to give Mikel Arteta a bit of a selection headache. Why do I say that? It's because in midweek, in their 3-1 victory against Inter Milan, he had his 2 strikers in Gabriel Jesus as be the goal scorers, as they beat up against Inter Milan by 3-1. Gabriel Jesus picking up a brace in that one, while what's his name, Victor Gyökeres scored the 3rd. Now, the game in itself comes a little too early for the likes of Max Dorman. Piero Hincap is looking towards a return, according to the Hand of Arsenal. Very, very reliable source when it comes to Arsenal news. He says his return is imminent or edging closer for returning from injury. Yesterday, we did see pictures of Riccardo Carafiori back in training. I can only hope that he will be fit for this particular game. Otherwise, Mikel Arteta will be forced to make the change of putting Julian Timber at left back and play Ben White at right back. And then, of course, the centre-back pairing of William Saliba and Gabriel Magalhaes with David Raya in goal. Those remain unchanged. In midfield, you expect it to be Declan Rice, Martin Zubimendi, Martin Odegaard. That's his preferred midfield trio, against Man United. In midweek, of course, he made changes to that. He played Zubimendi, Mikel Merino, and Ebeleche Eze, So then up front, you expect Leandro Trossard and Bukayo Saka as the starters. The question is, who is the player that is going to play in between the two? Do you start Gabriel Jesus? Do you start Victor Gyökeres? Now, Man United had the perfect plan for Brad Erling Haaland, and they managed to isolate him. He barely had a sniff in that game. Now, in terms of hold-up play, Brad Erling Haaland is a better player. In terms of goal scored, he's miles better than Victor Gyökeres. But more or less, they are both natural centre forwards who want to operate in the centre of the pitch. In other words, in and around the 18-yard box. That's their area of operation. When you bring Gabriel Jesus, he's a player that likes to veer off to the width and then before darting back into the centre. And that's why oftentimes, by the time you play that ball in the middle of the park, in terms of the opponent's box, he's often absent because he had veered off to the left wing or to the right wing. So, but given how Man United went about the game against Manchester City, I'd fancy Gabriel Jesus to start this game to cause you a bit of disruptions, because he keeps defenders on their toes, not knowing where he's going to be at a given time. He gives you that bit of rotation that one moment is going to be to the left wing, and then you'll see Leandro Trossard darting inwards, and vice versa when it comes to the right wing, and things like that. So he gives you that bit of iteration. He keeps defenders guessing, while he comes with the disadvantage of being absent in the box at the right time when you sometimes need him. He gives you that as an advantage. So if I'm Mikel Arteta thinking about this game, I'm thinking maybe it's time to give Gabriel Jesus a chance to start a Premier League game. Now, what that means is that it's sort of like a vote of no confidence in Victor Gyökeres, but for me, it's about game strategy. And whereas it would have a dent on Victor Gyökeres' confidence, which is not incredibly high, even though he scored in 2 big games now, scoring against Chelsea in the first leg of the EFL Cup and scoring against Inter Milan, it's the kind of decision that you have to make and then have to bring him on maybe after an hour or even 65 minutes, something like that, the way you did against Inter Milan. So I'd fancy Gabriel Jesus to start in that game. Why? So that whether it's Harry Maguire and Lisandro Martinez, you keep them on their toes. One, you keep them behind to so much not venture forward to, and then when it comes to the counter press, Gabriel Jesus is often good with that. So it helps you with that. United were good at building out from the back against Manchester United. They did it in such an effective way. So you need every single player that can help you with the counter press and should be good at it. So That's how I would go at it. I like on the side of Manchester United, they aren't without their injury concerns coming into this particular fixture, but the only doubtful figure has been Matthias De Ligt. Otherwise, all the others are available. Mason Mount, Matthias Cunha, everybody is present. So the question is for me, for Mike Carrick, do you go with the team that beat up against Manchester City? Why would you change a winning formula? Why would you change a winning team? Well, you change it because it's a different opponent, because the contexts are different. But remember, against Manchester City, they had Sene Lomans in goal. They had Harry Maguire and Lisandro Martinez as their centre-back pairing. They had Luke Shaw at left back and Diego Dalot at right back. They had Casemiro alongside Kobe Mainu. They had Amadou Diallo. They had Patrick Togu in the right and left wings, respectively. Then they had Brian Mbeumo and Bruno Fernandes as the twin strikers in a 4-4-2. But of course, we know Bruno Fernandes playing as a 10, and they played incredibly well. The things they did together as a team were really, really immaculate against Manchester City. So that's the question for Michael Carrick. Do you bring the same approach to Arsenal? Now, the one thing that we expect will not change is that Manchester United will come with a counter-attacking football tactic against Arsenal. That's what they've always deployed. That's what has always been successful for them every time they've been successful against Man United. So I do not think that strategy will change. However, how you press Arsenal, perhaps what kind of wiggle room you give them could be different. Now, a lot of questions have been made about Arsenal's, chances about winning the Premier League title, and largely the reason for it is that while they've been winning, they've been good a team. They've not looked as comfortable in the Premier League as they've done in the UEFA Champions League. Now, the difference is teams that they play against in the UEFA Champions League come to play football. They come with a bit of an open mind. They come a bit opened up, and that's why there's not a single game in the UEFA Champions League where Arsenal haven't scored a goal. There's not a single game where Arsenal have scored only one goal. They've scored at least 2 goals. They've conceded less. So tell me how or why you're capable of beating Inter Milan 3-1, capable of beating Bayern Munich 3-1 to end a 17-game unbeaten run for them at that point in the season. Tell me how you're capable of beating Atletico de Madrid by 4-0. Because some people that may not be following the events much from the UEFA Champions League may be thinking, or maybe Arsenal have been playing some soft opponents. No, Atletico Bilbao, a semi-finalist from the UEFA Europa League last season, is no easy opponent who they, I think, opened up their campaign with. So beating them by 2-0. So really, it's not been an easy run for them in the UEFA Champions League, and they always create the chances, they score the goals. Yet it is a sharp contrast when it comes to the Premier League that they've had to struggle against teams like Liverpool to score even a single goal, against Nottingham Forest to score a single goal, against Wolverhampton Wanderers in the first leg. Remember against Crystal Palace, they won that game by 0-0. Remember against Burnley, they only won that by 2-0. You remember there was another 1-0 victory in there. So why is that the case? Why? Because teams in the Premier League have set out to say, against this Arsenal side, they are better than us in majority of the aspects, so we will go and play a defensive game. That's the same reason why, for the first time in the history of Pep Guardiola, he came and parked the bus at the Emirates Stadium. They came to the Emirates Stadium and sat behind the ball and looked to only catch Arsenal on the counter-attack. Why? Because they knew how good Arsenal were, and it worked for them for at least 93 minutes until Gabriel Martinelli scores that equalizer to earn a point for the Arsenal. So that's the kind of thing about Premier League teams. They come to sit back and say, we will keep our shape. And in the Premier League, again, Arsenal has been often criticized as being slow. And I'm one of those critics, because oftentimes I felt that they need to move the ball much quicker. They need to add pace to their game if they are to unlock teams in the Premier League. But when you find a disciplined side that says, we will sit back, we will not break our shape, we will not break it, because when you come against a team playing with a low block, you'll keep knocking that ball around, hoping that 1 or 2 players will be attempted to come out and pursue that ball, and then quickly create for you spaces that then you can exploit to go ahead and score. So, and that kind of thing. So really, that's why it's been very, very difficult for Arsenal to win games with big margins in the campaign this season. So against Manchester United, you expect that Michael Carrick will come bearing in mind that he can deploy some of those tactics. Again, usually when you leave Manchester United with majority of the ball, they struggle for ideas for what to do with it, which is contrary to what Arsenal may be on a given day. So the beauty about this Arsenal side is about their flexibility and how they can play any game. Counter-attacking football, they can play that. Transition football, they are capable of that. Dominant football, where dominating possession and, suffocating a team with that, they know how to do that. So they have their variations to the game depending on the opponent and how, they apply themselves. So, but nonetheless, I think Bruno Fernandes, Amadou Diallo, Brani Mbeumo, those three players will be a huge thorn in the foot for the Arsenal to handle. And that's where Arsenal need to be really, really critical. They need to neutralize the threat of Amadou Diallo, Brani Mbeumo, and Bruno Fernandes if they are to win the game against Man United. So, I do not think United will change so much in terms of their starting 11, but how they exploit play and spaces may be a bit different. Again, if you're Man United, Arsenal overcommit. Oftentimes you find their centre-backs who they oftentimes leave as two defenders in Gabriel Magalhaes and William Saliba, who I think are not quick enough. They play up to beyond the center line. So if you're Man United, you're always going to commit that player up front that anytime you win that ball back, you can play the long pass and get them on the counter-attack, and you can exploit in behind those spaces. So then United will need to do better at defending set pieces, because that's another point of threat for this Arsenal side. That's where they can get a better view, So it's going to be a lot to handle for Manchester United. Nonetheless, am I convinced Arsenal will win? Am I convinced that just because United were so brilliant against Manchester City, they'll win this one too? I'm not too sold. Arsenal's recent form in the Premier League has not left me really, really well encouraged as well. Against Nottingham Forest, they could have won that game, created some brilliant chances, about 3 chances. Maybe they had taken those away, would be talking about a different result. However, I'm going to go with my gut feeling here and say Arsenal will win the game by 2-1. That's my prediction. It's a prediction. So yeah, do let me know what your thoughts are on that game. What you think we should anticipate in that game. So that's the big game of the weekend. For the other games that are to come our way, we will preview some of those on tonight when we come live for our night broadcast, and then we'll continue the conversation possibly, God willing, on Saturday morning. So yeah, that's it from the Premier League in regards to what to expect. Now, before we go in regards to what we expect to happen elsewhere in Europe, unless you have any questions. Tonight, Levante will be up against Elche at 11 p.m. East African time in the Spanish La Liga. In the German Bundesliga, St. Pauli will be up against Hamburg SV, while Inter Milan will take on Pisa. Now, I don't know why Inter Milan have a game who played on Tuesday are playing on a Friday night, even though they have a game on Wednesday away to Borussia Dortmund. Wouldn't they be better off playing in an early kickoff on Saturday? Anyways, it's against Pisa. Then in the Ligue 1, French Ligue 1, Auxerre will be up against Paris Saint-Germain. That's for what's to come your way tonight. And then on Saturday, action will continue from the Spanish La Liga. Rayo Vallecano will take on Osasuna. Valencia will be at home against Espanyol. Sevilla will welcome Athletic Bilbao, while Villarreal will entertain Real Madrid in the late kickoff on Saturday. In the German Bundesliga, Bayer Leverkusen will take on Werder Bremen. Bayern Munich will be up against Augsburg. Eintracht Frankfurt will be up against Hoffenheim. Heidenheim will take on RB Leipzig. Mainz will be up against Wolfsburg. Union Berlin will take on Borussia Dortmund. In the Italian Serie A, Como will be up against Torino. Fiorentina will take on Cagliari. Lecce will be up against Lazio, while in Ligue 1, Stade Rennes will take on Lorient. Havre will be up against Monaco, while Marseille will take on lens. Remember, all teams in the UEFA Champions League have games to play next week on Wednesday at 11 p.m. The beauty for it is some have weaker opponents. Arsenal have already qualified, so the game over the weekend is what they'll have all their concentration on, because the midweek game is against Kairati Almaty. You fancy that whatever changes Mikel Arteta may make in that squad, they still have the capability to pick up a point from that game and finish at the summit over the Champions League table. Then on Super Sunday, Atletico de Madrid will be up against Mallorca. Barcelona will take on Rio Oviedo. Real Sociedad will take on Celta Vigo, while Deportivo Alves will be up against Real Betis in the Spanish La Liga. In the German Bundesliga, VfB Stuttgart will play away to Borussia Mönchengladbach, while Freiburg will be at home against Cologne. In the Italian Serie A, Sassuolo will take on Cremonese. Atlanta will be at home against Parma. Bologna will play away to Genoa, while Napoli will be away to Juventus in Turin. Big game. And then AC Roma. That game between Juventus and Napoli will come at 8 p.m., while AC Roma at 10:45 p.m. will entertain AC Milan. In the French Ligue 1, Nantes will take on Nice. This is on Super Sunday. Brest will be up against Toulouse. Métis will be up against Lyon. Paris FC will be up against Angers, while Strasbourg will make the trip to Lille there, in as far as the weekend is concerned. Okay, then let's get to look at what's been making the rounds in as far as the transfer speculation and rumor mill has been up to. Liverpool and Egyptian forward Mohamed Salah, 33, and Real Madrid's forward Vinicius Jr., 25 years of age, will be the two prime transfer targets for the Saudi Pro League this summer, according to the Telegraph. Meanwhile, Salah will leave Liverpool this summer. Saudi Pro League insiders believe that's according to iPaper. Tottenham's Italian goalkeeper Guillermo Vicario, 29, is interesting Inter Milan as they line up a replacement for Switzerland international Jan Sommer, 37. That's according to Gazzetta in Italia. Crystal Palace have held talks with Wolverhampton Wanderers regarding a potential move for 25-year-old Norwegian striker Jørgen Strand Larsen. That's according to TalkSport. Manchester United are ready to open contract talks with 20-year-old England midfielder Kobbie Mainoo. Remember, they had contract talks and those ones stalled. Now that Ruben Amorim is out of the way, perhaps Kobbie Mainoo could have a change of heart. Garnacho says, how old are you? Old enough to hold an adult conversation. Thank you so much, Garnacho, for joining the broadcast. Kindly like the broadcast, but also consider subscribing to the channel if you're new here. Then Chelsea are considering making a loan move for 27-year-old Brazilian midfielder Douglas Luiz, who is unknown at Nottingham Forest from Juventus for the rest of the season. Chelsea are not the only ones interested. Even his former club in Aston Villa are interested. Remember, he left Aston Villa in the summer over 2024 and joined Juventus for about 50 million euros. His debut campaign was was far from the best he would have hoped for. That's how he ended up on loan to Nottingham Forest, where Juventus can recall him and then send him out on loan to either Chelsea or Aston Villa. So let's wait and see how that rumor or that deal will shape up in the coming days as we draw closer to the January transfer window that shuts down on the 1st of February. Then Major League Soccer side, Charlton FC are interested in England under-21 international Harvey Elliott, who is on loan at Aston Villa from Liverpool, according to Sky Sports. Leeds and Sunderland are both set to miss out on a move for Norwich City striker Josh Sargent. The 25-year-old US international is keen on a move back to the Major League Soccer, with Toronto FC his preferred option, according to Team Talk, while Arsenal are looking into signing 16-year-old defender Iago Machado from Brazilian side Corinthians. Roma and several other clubs are still in the race for Manchester United and Netherlands forward Joshua Zirkzee, according to Sky Sports Germany's Florian Plettenberg there. So that's what is happening in the rumor mill over the transfer speculation. But yeah, according to Ben Jacobs, of Gimme Football and Talksport, he does say that there is a contract offer in the region of 1 billion euros for Vinicius Jr., who for the last 1 year, Saudi Pro League clubs have been trying to court. They've been courting him for over a year now. They want to sign him. Now, I've said this before, after 6 years at Real Madrid, if you have a 1 billion euro offer on the table for you, that's enough money to build a village. Like I said, unless you come from the wealthiest families of Brazil, which I'm sure Vinicius Jr. isn't from, it's a no-brainer for me. I'd consider making the move. You've played for Real Madrid, biggest club in Europe. You've won everything there is to win with Real Madrid, apart from the new Club World Cup. Make the move. Make the move for the money. Of course, the football is there. Look at Cristiano Ronaldo. He was already rich, perhaps even wealthy, and he just got more. As Cristiano Ronaldo ages out, you could be the next face of Saudi Pro League football. Cole Palmer to Manchester United, not happening anytime soon. Not happening anytime soon. You're talking about a player who is contracted with Chelsea until what? 2033? I don't think United will be making a move for Cole Palmer. In other, like I said, their main priorities are to fix the midfield, and that is central midfield and attacking midfield. There's still speculation that Bruno Fernandes could leave, or that United could want to cash in on him in the summer. So you remember when Al Hilal were interested in him last summer and were willing to offer Man United up to £100 million. There are certain senior figures within the ranks of Manchester United that were being tempted with that offer. However, they wanted to leave the decision in the players' hands on whether to leave or not. So yeah. Anyways, guys, that's it from me this beautiful morning on Thursday. We'll be maybe recording a video and putting it out there going forward for maybe today. But thank you so much, Pedri. Thank you so much, Olie. Joseph, thank you so much, Mohammed, Sofiana. Thank you so much, Ganacho. And every single one of you that has been part of this beautiful morning broadcast. Allow me wish you a wonderful rest of the day and a blessed weekend ahead. Like I told you, we'll be back here on, at night for our night broadcast, and then possibly on Saturday, provided God grants us the health. Stay blessed, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye for now.